Basically, there are three ways to add CSS in your HTML: inline with style attribute, internal inside the head tag, and external with creating .css file, which is the most popular and better approach. I'm gonna use the internal for now. The syntax of the CSS is pretty simple. Firstly, you have to write the selector, which element to select, then middle bracket, then property, then value, and lastly semicolon. First selector is the universal selector, where you can select every element inside that HTML file. Then we have a type of selector or element selector, where you can select that element or tag to style it. But the best approach is to use class attribute or ID attribute, where you have to select by dot class name and a hash ID name. The main difference of them is multiple element can have same class, but ID should be different for each element. Next is the combinator selector, where you can select a children element, which is the better approach if you are using the multiple children and want to style the same. Or you can use the group selector to select multiple child at once. There are several ways to add colors in CSS. The simple way to give them by their name, and another way is to by hovering and selecting the color whatever you like. RGB red, green, blue is the most common way to pick the color. You can simply select how much shade of the red, green or blue color you want and experiment with it. It might take you time to learn it, and you may not need any other method to pick color. If you want to use the background image, you can simply give the background image URL to the element. There are more other background property like background size, background repeat, background position, etc. You can use the certain property of background in a single line, like giving the background image first, then the repeat second, then giving the position and the size. If you want to give some height, width, etc., you need to give some measurement unit. There are two types of measurement unit in CSS. One is relative, which are dependent on parent element or several other factors, while absolute unit are not changeable. It is better approach to use relative unit most of the time, and it can make a website more responsive. Here BH is viewport height and BW is viewport width of a screen, so it can be different for different screen or different devices. You can see other relative unit like EM and REM. EM is different from its parent and REM is different from the root element. If you increase the size of the parent, EM size will also increase. Percentage values are also useful if you are giving width, height from its parent. If you are using absolute unit, you will see most of the time people are using pixels. If you want to add spaces in element, you can use padding and margin. Padding adds space inside the element, and margin will add space outside the element. That means if we give the padding will also add the width or height of the element, but not margin. To create borders, the certain property is to give the width, style and the color. You can make curved border by giving the border radius. There are several font properties to style the font in CSS, like font size to maintain size, font family to add the which family to use, and font weight to manage thickness of the font. You can also use text property like align, decorate and transform to style text in CSS. Letter spacing add space to the letter, and line height will add the height of the line. Overflow property can be used if your text or content is overflowing from parent element. You can control the overflow in x-axis or y-axis or both at once. It's mainly have two values, scroll or hidden, where hidden will hide the content, scroll make it scrollable. You can control the transparency of an element by giving the opacity its value from 0 to 1. 1 is the default value, which is the 100% where 0 means not visible to the screen, but elements will take space. Box arrow can be used to give the shadow to the box. It mainly have 5 values. First two are for axis offset, third is for blue radius, fourth is for spread, and fifth is for which color do you want to give. Position property helps any HTML element to render anywhere you want in the page. First position value is the relative, where it will create the element position to relative to its original position. Position also have other property to use like top, left, right, bottom to adjust your position of the element. It also has the index property which helps to control what to show in front of what element, which have integer value and default of 0. If you want to use another position value absolute, you have to be careful because it will be relative to the pivot or the root HTML element. So you want to use its parent element to position relative to work relative to its parent. Another position property is the fixed. It will act relative to its HTML root or pivot, and it is unscrollable and fixed to the screen. Sticky can be also useful if you want to make some scroll in the fix to the screen. CSS transform property can also be used to transform an HTML element into 2D or complex 3D transformation. It allows to translate, rotate, scale, skew in either one axis or both axes of an HTML element. Transitions are the simple way to animate HTML element by changing the property. It can have 4 values. First is the property which you want to animate, then the animation functions, third is the time, and fourth is the delay to start the animation. Display property in CSS is used to control the layout behavior of HTML element. It also has several values like block, which takes the full width and start from the new line, and inline only takes the width of its content, and the inline block takes the width of its content, but its height and width property can be redefined. Display non-max element does not display and it does not take space also. Flex is one of the most important topics in CSS. It helps to make layout much easier. It also has the several properties. First is the direction. Default is the row, and you can give the row, column, or its reverse. If you want to control the alignment in a horizontal, you can use the strike content, and for vertical you can use align items. Flex, row, and string can be used if you want to control how much elements should grow or shrink in their respective of their siblings element if the parent grow. If you want to control vertical and horizontal element by ones, you can use the grid, which is better approach for building flexible and responsive elements. It is most difficult topic in CSS to learn. It also has several properties like grid template to columns or row, which will help you to how much row or column you want. You can control the alignment of the elements by using property like align item, justify content, just like in Flexbox, or you can use the place content to use as a shorthand. If you want to control the alignment of a particular grid element, you can use the grid row or grid column to control which row to start and where to end. And you can also use a certain property grid area. If you want to make your website mobile responsive, you can use a media like this. Mainly the media type is a screen, and it have some condition you can use like the minimum or maximum width of the screen to control which device is using. You can reduce size, or basically you can add the normal CSS. You can also use the multiple condition like orientation also. Landscape means height is less than width.